Good evening, and thank you very much for your time. So Malawi, like South Africa, is signatory to the SADC extradition agreement. But also, of course, this matter ultimately has to be processed through the Malawian legal system. So how does the SADC treaty fit in with the Malawian justice system? And ultimately, does the Malawian justice system trump everything?
Well, we should expect the SADC treaty to be brought to a test within the Malawi judicial system, because the mere fact that we signed that treaty does not automatically mean that it is part of the laws of Malawi. According to our constitution, it's supposed to be domesticated under section 211 of the constitution. So perhaps when this matter goes to court, that should be one of the arguments which perhaps the lawyers will have to tussle, whether the SADC protocol, the SADC treaty, is part of the laws of Malawi, which can be used for purposes of extradition in this particular case.
All right.
But as you rightly put it, beyond that, beyond the SADC treaty, there is an extradition act, which governs all sorts of extraditions in Malawi with regard to countries which have got arrangements when it comes to extradition.
Okay, so let's talk about what Malawian law and the sedition treaty you mentioned says about extraditing Malawian citizens back to a country to face a crime which would be also something that would be recognized in Malawi, such as money laundering or corruption. Is it a simple process because they're Malawian citizens? Does it make it complicated because they're Malawian citizens? Talk us through.
Well, it is a process. It is a long-drawn process, I can assure you. We should not expect these cases to commence, perhaps to last not less than 6 months to come. It's a process which involves both the executive arm of government and the judicial arm of government. Because once the South African government makes that request for extradition, then it has to go through the Minister of Foreign Affairs. It has to go through the Minister of Homeland Security. So it is the Minister of Homeland Security who will make a decision whether to issue what we call an authority to proceed. If he issues an authority to proceed, then he will issue a warrant of arrest, a Malawian warrant of arrest, to have Bushiri arrested in Malawi to face committal proceedings for surrender to South Africa. So at that stage, you can see that I think it's a diplomatic issue whether the Minister of Homeland Affairs will, based on the facts, the law, and the evidence which is before him, decide to issue the authority to proceed. Now, if he issues that authority to proceed, and the court agrees that, yes, based on the law and the facts and the evidence which is before it, Bushiri and his wife should be arrested, then they will be arrested and brought before the court to face what we call committal proceedings. Now, during those committal proceedings, what they're supposed to prove, in this case, the South African government, through the Minister of Justice here in Malawi, are two things: that what they're being accused in South Africa is a relevant offense. What is a relevant offense means that it must also be an offense in Malawi. The Extradition Act has got a schedule of offenses which it recognizes that for these particular offenses only can a person be extradited. Those are the issues which we should expect in court to come up, to say are the charges of corruption, money laundering, relevant offenses in terms of whether they are part of the extradition law in Malawi.
And sorry, the second issue, so it has to be deemed also a similar offence, but what is the second issue that has to be assessed before the Bushiris might be sent back?
The second issue are the issues of restrictions. Yes, it may be a relevant offence, but the Extradition Act also provides for restrictions. If the person who is the fugitive offender feels that his extradition is likely to face prosecution based on his four things. The Extradition Act specifies race, nationality, religion, and political opinion. If he's likely to be prejudiced in his trial in South Africa based on those four expressive things, then it's a restriction. He cannot be extradited. So it will be up to the courts. Perhaps I'm assuming, and I'm assuming based on having watched the interview which Bushiri gave a few days ago, you will agree with me, he was raising issues of who is prosecuting in South Africa. There were issues of racial issues which have been raised if you watch that interview. He was insisting on being Malawian in that interview.
I am battling to hear you, but I think from what I'm saying is it has to be an offence that would be recognised in Malawi as an offence, and the Malawian legal system has to be sure that they won't be prejudiced because of their race, colour, religion, whatever, if they return. Okay, great. So I'm hearing you correctly. One of the things the Bushiris are saying is that they are being targeted by law enforcement, that they have, on 2 previous occasions, Shepherd Bushiri says there was an attempt on his life here in South Africa. Could that stop the extradition process in its tracks in Malawi?
Yes, it could. That could stop the process, because if it fits into the restrictions, and that's what I was saying, when you listen to the interview, perhaps he's answering to the restrictions in the law. Because if the court is able to interpret that as falling within the restrictions, the issue of him being persecuted, the issue of him having the same people whom he laid allegations against being the prosecutor, investigators of his case. So the court will have to look at all that broadly. And perhaps maybe I should add that all that will be happening in the magistrate court. But when you go to the High Court has got a wider limit on how it can interpret these things. The issues like the delay in prosecuting in South Africa is also expressly provided under the Extradition Act, that the court can take that into account. To say that delay will cause prejudice, and it's subjective because you don't know how the period of the delay is not defined.
So the things, we don't know how they left the country. We don't know if they're in Malawi still. And one thing I wanted to ask from you, we know that the South African government has now issued a warrant of arrest for the couple. Because of that warrant of arrest, will it stop Malawi from letting them move to another country where extradition might be even more difficult?
No, at the moment there's no that kind of restriction. Until, legally speaking, until through the diplomatic channels, the South African government transmits to the Malawi government the request for extradition, there's nothing that the Malawi government is entitled to do under the law.
And do you know at all, and what are people in Malawi saying about this couple? Is it known where they are in Malawi, or is it all rumour and smoke and mirrors at this point?
I wouldn't know where they are. We all follow what is being reported in the media. He declared himself to be in Malawi, and we take it that he is in Malawi. Where in particular in Malawi he is, I don't think anybody is interested to follow up on that until perhaps there is a move through the South African government to the Malawi government.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm so sorry about the line, but we did get some really important and interesting information from Malawian lawyer. Thank you very much, Wapona Kita, coming to us from Lilongwe.